Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today, we're looking at something I bet you think about a lot, and that's Google Ads costs in 2025.
Yeah,
You've sent us a ton of research on this, and let me tell you, it is a jungle out there.
yeah, it is.
But don't worry, we're here to be your guides, whether you're already a pro or you're just starting out with Google Ads.
Yeah,
What we really want is for you to walk away from this feeling like you can make some really smart decisions about your Google Ads strategy. Like you've got some insider knowledge that's going to give you an edge.
exactly.
And trust me, there are some surprising things in this research that might just change how you think about Google Ads. Ready to jump in?
Absolutely. What I think is so interesting is that in 2025, we're seeing just a much wider range of costs than ever before. It really highlights how important it is to have a solid strategy in place because a good plan can really make or break your budget.
Okay, so let's just set the scene here. This research is showing that cost per conversion on Google Ads in 2025 can range anywhere from 0.08 to get this 115 year. Yeah, that's a pretty wild spectrum.
It is, and that's why it can be misleading to just focus on those outliers, on those extremes. Actually, the median cost per conversion is 27.8 euro.
Yeah.
And the average CPM, which is the cost per 1,000 impressions, comes in at 9.4 euro. So those numbers, I think, are pretty good benchmarks to keep in mind as we go deeper into all this.
Yeah, benchmarks are super helpful, but I bet you're already thinking, okay, but what's driving those huge variations in cost? Like, what is the secret sauce here?
Well, think of it this way. Google Ads isn't one size fits all. The cost that you're going to end up paying really depends on a whole bunch of different things. Stuff like the type of campaign you're running, obviously the industry you're in, what your targeting strategy is, even how good your ads are. Like the quality of the ads themselves can affect how much you end up spending.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but we'll unpack all of those different factors so you can get a sense of where your business fits in and start thinking about some smart strategies.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about channels. The research that we've got here highlights 4 main Google Ads channels. So we've got Search, Performance Max, Display, and Video. And they each seem to have their own strengths and kind of quirks.
Yeah.
So can you just give us a quick overview of each one and like how they fit into different business goals?
Sure. Think of Search and Performance Max as your tools for getting those direct results.
Okay.
So think leads, sales, the actual outcomes. Search is really good for capturing people who are actively looking for something specific. So they're typing something in, they've got a specific need, they're ready to go. Whereas Performance Max actually uses Google's AI to kind of dynamically place your ads across all of Google's networks. But those two are all about ROI. They're all about results. On the other hand, you've got Display and Video, and those are like your brand building champs. They're about getting your message in front of a wider audience, boosting brand awareness, and making sure that your brand is top of mind for people. So it's really about picking the right channel that matches your goals. That's step one.
That's a good point. All right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. This research has a really fascinating breakdown of Google Ads costs by different industries, and it shows how much context actually matters when you're talking about these costs.
Yeah.
But before we get into the numbers, I think it's worth just doing a quick reminder. What's the difference between CPC and cost per conversion? Because I think sometimes people get those two mixed up.
Yeah.
I know I did when I was starting out.
For sure. So CPC, or cost per click, is just the amount of money you pay every time someone clicks your ad.
Okay.
It's basically like the price of getting someone to visit your website. But cost per conversion, that's a bit more nuanced. It's the amount you spend to get someone to actually do something specific. So it could be buying a product, signing up for a newsletter, booking an appointment. Something that actually matters to your business.
Right.
So CPC is all about the traffic, whereas cost per conversions is all about getting those results.
That's a really good distinction. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, let's jump into the industry breakdown. And just a little disclaimer here. These are just averages. Your mileage may vary. Your costs might be different. But this is a really great starting point, I think, to understand the landscape. So the data shows that e-commerce businesses, for example, they can actually see some pretty low costs. So we're talking a CPC around 1 euro, a cost per conversion of 6, especially if they're using shopping campaigns, which seem to be really effective for e-commerce.
Yeah, and if you think about it, that makes sense because e-commerce platforms are already set up to get those conversions right. They're optimized for that.
Yeah.
And people who are shopping online generally have pretty high purchase intent.
Yeah, they're ready to buy.
Yeah, they're there, they're ready to buy. So your ads are more likely to actually lead to a sale, which drives down your cost per conversion.
That's a great point. So if you're an e-commerce business listening to this, shopping campaigns, get on that. But what about industries where the sales cycle is a little bit longer, or maybe competition is just crazy fierce. So the research mentions that professional services often see much higher costs. Why is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, professional services, so think law firms, consulting agencies, that kind of thing.
Okay.
They often have a higher CPC, so we're talking maybe 5 to 10 euros.
Mm-hmm.
And their cost per conversion can really jump up. It could be anywhere from 40 at 20 to 120.
Whoa.
And this is partly because they're going after those high-value leads, the
Mhm.
clients that are worth a lot of money in the long run. So they're willing to pay more to get them in the door. Competition definitely plays a role too, but it's also about that lifetime value of the customer. You know how much they're worth to you over time.
That makes you think about the trade-offs, right? Like higher costs, but potentially much more valuable clients. Okay, healthcare is another one that I found really interesting because the research says the costs can vary a lot depending on the specific niche that you're in. Why is that?
Yeah, it's all about the specialization. Right? A general practitioner, for example, might have costs that are pretty similar to e-commerce, relatively low. But then you have a specialist who's dealing with a really rare condition, and their costs could be more in line with what we see with professional services. It's a total mixed bag.
Really depends.
It really depends. And I think this just highlights how important it is to understand your audience and what they're actually searching for.
Yeah.
You have to be really specific.
You got to niche down. Speaking of niches, where does SaaS fit into all of this?
Ooh, SaaS businesses? I think they're in a pretty good spot when it comes to Google Ads. They often do really well with search campaigns.
Okay.
CPCs are generally in that 3 to 5 Rio range, and conversions usually come in around 20 to 45 euro.
Huh.
And Performance Max can be a real game changer for SaaS companies because it can help them really scale their lead generation efforts and do it pretty effectively. But remember, this is just averages, right? Your product, your target market, even how you set up your campaign all play a role too. So it's not just about what the industry average is.
It's got to be tailored to you. All right, we've got a general sense now of some industry benchmarks, but I think what's really interesting is those specific factors that can actually drive costs up or down. And the research kind of digs into a few of these. The one that really jumps out at me is geographic location.
Yeah.
Why does where you are in the world matter so much for how much you're going to pay for Google Ads?
It's all about what's going on in the market locally, right?
Okay.
So think about things like how much competition there is for different keywords, what are the average income levels in the area, even how people in that area use search engines, like their online behavior. All of that changes so much from place to place. And all of those differences affect how much advertisers are willing to pay,
Yeah.
which then affects your costs.
So even like within a relatively small geographic area, you can see some pretty big swings in costs.
Absolutely.
That's all right.
For example, the average CPC on the search network in the US is somewhere between $1 and $3. But if you go over to UAE, you're probably going to see CPCs that are like 8% higher. Yeah, it's all about that local market.
Wow, that's a pretty big difference for, geographically not a huge jump.
Right.
Makes you wonder if like targeting specific regions strategically could actually give you a real edge. Are there any regions where costs are like notably lower?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you're going after Eastern European markets, like Bulgaria, for example, you might see CPCs in the Euro 0.50 to 1 range,
Interesting.
which is really valuable information if you're a business that wants to go international or test out some new markets without, spending a fortune.
Yeah, you can kind of test the waters.
Right.
It's like that old real estate saying, location, location, location. Seems to apply just as much to digital advertising as it does to brick and mortar businesses. But let's be real, location is not the only thing that can drive up those costs. The research also mentions keyword competitiveness as being a major factor. Like some keywords are just plain expensive. What's that all about?
It's supply and demand, really.
Okay.
If there are tons of businesses fighting over the same keyword, the price is going to go up.
Naturally.
So think about the legal field. A broad keyword, like personal injury lawyer, could cost you somewhere between 40 to 120 euro every time someone clicks it.
Wow.
That's because everybody wants to be at the top of the page when someone searches for that and they're willing to pay a premium for it.
So the more general the keyword is, the higher the competition and the higher the cost. But are there ways to kind of avoid those really high costs without sacrificing visibility?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Instead of going after those really broad, super competitive terms, think about what your ideal client is actually searching for.
Okay.
Get really specific.
Be granular.
Exactly. So instead of personal injury lawyer, what if you target something like car accident lawyer in city name? you're probably going to see less competition and your cost per click could drop significantly.
Okay.
It could go down to like 5 or 10 euro.
So it's about being strategic, doing that keyword research, really digging into what people are actually searching for and finding those kind of sweet spots where you can get good visibility but without having to spend a fortune.
Exactly.
Smart. But it's not just about the keywords themselves, is it? The research also talks about campaign setup and like the quality of your ad creative can impact your costs.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Imagine you're Google and you want to show people the most relevant and engaging ads possible, right?
Right.
If your ad copy is weak or your images are blurry or your landing page is confusing, Google's going to notice that. And they might even kind of penalize you with higher costs because those ads aren't really providing a good experience for the user.
So it's not just about throwing money at Google. It's about actually creating good ads that people actually want to click on.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And there are a few things you can do to make your ads really top-notch. First of all, your ad copy needs to be super clear, super concise, and it needs to grab people's attention. Secondly, your creative assets, so images and videos, those really matter. High-quality visuals can really boost your click-through rates.
Right.
And then finally, don't underestimate the power of a good landing page. That's where the magic really happens.
Right. That's where it all comes together. The landing page is where those conversions happen. It needs to load quickly. It needs to be mobile friendly. It needs to have a clear call to action.
Right.
You can have the best ad in the world, but if your landing page is a dud, you're not going to see the results that you want.
Totally.
So we've covered location, we've covered keywords, we've covered quality of your campaigns. What's the next big piece of the puzzle when it comes to Google Ads costs?
I think the next big piece is your bidding strategy.
Yeah, the bidding strategy.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
It's how you tell Google how much you're actually willing to pay for every click or impression. It's kind of like an auction,
Yeah.
but it's way more nuanced than that. And there are a couple different approaches you can take. You can do manual bidding, which means you're setting all those bids yourself, or you can do automated bidding, which is basically letting Google's algorithms handle it for you.
Got it. So manual is more hands-on, automated is more like set it and forget it, or is it that simple?
Not quite. Manual bidding gives you a lot of control,
Yeah.
but you have to be constantly monitoring things and making adjustments.
Yeah.
So you're basically playing this back and forth game with the algorithms, trying to optimize your bids in real time. It could be a lot.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. Automated bidding, on the other hand, can save you so much time.
Yeah.
It basically lets Google's AI do all the heavy lifting. And actually, especially as those algorithms get more and more sophisticated, it can lead to much better results. Like it can actually outperform humans in many cases.
Wow. So which approach is best then? Is it humans versus machines?
Not really.
Yeah.
It really just depends on how comfortable you are, what your budget is, and how complex your campaigns are.
Yeah.
If you're just starting out, or if you don't have a huge budget to play with, automated bidding can be a fantastic choice.
Okay.
You could use strategies like target CPA or maximize conversions, which are all about getting you the most bang for your buck. As you get more experience and your campaigns get a bit more complex, then you might want to explore manual bidding to really fine-tune things. But that's a whole other deep dive, I think.
Okay, let's put a pin in that one for now. So we've talked about how Google Ads costs can be different for different industries, different locations, the importance of doing good keyword research, how the quality of your campaigns matters, and how your bidding strategy plays a role. But I want to shift gears for a second here.
Okay.
Instead of just focusing on the costs themselves, I think it's really important to talk about ROI, return on investment.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters, right? It's not just about spending money. It's about making sure that money is actually working for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If we kind of zoom out and look at the big picture,
Yeah.
you're exactly right. The goal isn't to just spend as little as possible. It's to get the most value out of every single euro that you put into Google Ads.
So how do we do that? How do we actually maximize our ROI? The research that we have here highlights a few key drivers, and I'm really curious to hear your take on them.
So the most important thing, and we touched on this earlier, is understanding your audience.
Right.
I can't emphasize this enough. You need to really get to know your target audience. So you need to know their demographics, their interests, their behaviors, what makes them tick, what are their pain points, what are they searching for?
Yeah. It's not just about reaching anybody. It's about reaching the right people.
Exactly.
The people who are actually likely to convert into paying customers.
Right, because they're the ones that are going to bring in the money, right?
Yeah.
And once you know who you're targeting, You need to make sure your ads are actually relevant to them and that they're engaging.
Mm.
And this goes back to what we talked about earlier with ad quality and landing page optimization. It's all about delivering the right message at the right time to the right people. You got to get all three of those things aligned.
Right. It's like a perfect alignment of the stars.
Exactly. The right audience, the right message, the right moment. It's all about timing.
But there's also the structure of the campaigns themselves, right?
Yes.
Like how you organize everything can also impact your ROI. How does that work?
A clear campaign structure where everything's organized really well allows you to target people a lot more accurately.
Okay.
It's basically like you're creating a roadmap for your ads. You're telling Google exactly who you want to reach and how you want to reach them. And this not only improves your chances of getting in front of the right people,
Yeah.
but it also makes it way easier to track your performance.
Okay. And speaking of tracking, that's got to be another essential element of maximizing ROI. You have to know what's working, what's not. Otherwise, you're just kind of shooting in the dark, right?
Exactly. Tools like Google Analytics are your best friend when it comes to monitoring your campaigns, seeing how many conversions you're getting, and figuring out where you can improve. It's like having a microscope for your campaigns. You can zoom in and see exactly what's happening, which lets you make decisions that are based on data.
Right. You're not just guessing. You're like a scientist in the lab looking at all the data.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got audience insights, ad quality, campaign structure, and conversion tracking. Anything else that we need to keep in mind when it comes to ROI?
One more thing that I think is really important to mention is hidden costs.
Uh-oh. The stuff that they don't always tell you about in the Google Ads tutorials, the stuff that can sneak up on you and totally blow your budget.
Exactly. And it's really easy to get so focused on the cost of the ads themselves, those clicks and impressions, that you forget about all the other expenses that come with running a successful Google Ads campaign.
So spill the tea. What kind of hidden costs are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, if you're working with an agency to manage your campaigns, you're going to have to pay them, right?
Right.
But even if you're doing everything yourself, DIY style, you might still need to invest in some tools to help you with things like keyword research or ad creation or landing page optimization. And these tools can be super helpful, but they do add to your overall costs.
So it's not just the clicks themselves that are costing you money.
Right. It's everything around it, too.
It's like the whole ecosystem of running these campaigns.
Right. And then there's also the cost of creating those high-quality assets that we talked about earlier, like videos and graphics.
Yeah?
Those can get really expensive, especially if you're working with professionals. And if you want to get really fancy and implement more advanced optimizations like server-side tagging or AI-powered bidding, those can come with additional costs as well.
So it really sounds like running a successful Google Ads campaign is a real investment.
It is.
It's an investment of time, energy, effort, and money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like any good investment, if you do it right, the returns can be phenomenal.
You can get amazing results. Okay, so we've talked about the factors that affect those costs. We've talked about some keys to actually maximizing that ROI, and we've even talked about those sneaky hidden costs.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this section, I think it's worth addressing some of those common misconceptions about Google Ads.
Yeah.
There are a lot of myths and rumors out there, so I think it's time to bust those myths wide open.
Love it. Myth-busting time. What have you heard?
Well, one that I hear all the time is that if you just spend more money, you're automatically going to be successful. It's like this more is always better mentality. But is that actually true in Google Ads?
Not necessarily. Like we've been talking about, there are so many other things that matter. You can have a massive budget and just blow through all of it on poorly targeted ads and see absolutely zero results.
You can just set money on fire, basically.
Pretty much.
Yes.
On the other hand, you could have a small, really well-optimized campaign that completely outperforms a much larger, poorly executed campaign. So it's not about how much you spend, it's about how you spend it.
It's about strategy, it's about targeting, it's about optimization. It's not just about throwing money in a problem.
Exactly. Another myth I hear all the time is that small businesses just can't compete with the big guys on Google Ads.
Yeah. It's intimidating.
It is. It feels like, oh, only those huge companies with those gigantic budgets can play the game. But is that actually true?
Right.
Not really. Google Ads is actually a pretty level playing field in a lot of ways. A small business that has a niche product and a really focused campaign can absolutely compete with a giant corporation.
Okay.
It's all about finding the right keywords, creating really compelling ads, and optimizing for those conversions. It's about being agile and strategic, not necessarily having the biggest budget.
That's actually really encouraging because it means that size doesn't matter as much as, how smart you are. And this kind of ties into another myth that I hear often, which is that Google Ads is just too expensive for small businesses. Is there any truth to that?
Not really. You can set your own budget, remember. You're in control. And there are tons of ways to keep those costs down, like focusing on those long-tail keywords we talked about, maybe targeting just specific locations, and constantly optimizing your campaigns to make sure you're squeezing every last bit of value out of that budget.
So you don't need $1 million budget to get started. You can actually start small, kind of learn the ropes, and then as your business grows and as you get more confident, you can scale up.
Absolutely. And the cool thing is, as you get more experience and as you refine your strategies, you're going to get more out of every dollar or euro that you spend. So it's a learning curve, but it's definitely worth it.
The more you do it, the better you get at it. All right, so we've busted the myth about needing a giant budget. We've busted the myth about small businesses not being able to compete. And we've busted the myth about affordability. Are there any other common misconceptions that we should address?
Yeah. One that I hear a lot, especially from people who are new to Google Ads, is that there are certain keywords that are just always super expensive and that you absolutely have to target them.
Ah, yes. The must-have keywords.
Exactly. The ones that everyone's fighting over, even though they cost a fortune. And while it's true that some of those broad keywords can be really competitive and expensive, they're not always the most effective ones to target. Sometimes going after more specific long-tail keywords can actually bring you more qualified traffic and more conversions at a lower cost. It's about finding those hidden gems that are really relevant to your audience and match what they're actually searching for.
So it's not just about bidding on those super popular keywords. It's about being strategic, being smart, finding those keywords that will actually bring you the right kind of traffic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the last myth I want to bust is the idea that once you've launched a Google Ads campaign, you can just set it and forget it.
I wish it were that easy.
I know, right? Wouldn't that be nice? But that's not how it works. Google Ads is a dynamic platform. It's constantly changing. The algorithms are always evolving. Competitors are always doing different things. And your audience's needs and interests change over time, too. So to stay ahead of the game, you have to constantly monitor your campaigns, analyze the data, and adjust things as needed.
So it's about ongoing optimization. It's not a one-time setup. It's
Right.
like a constant process of refining and improving.
Exactly. And that's where the magic really happens. By staying engaged and being willing to adapt, you can make sure that your Google Ads campaigns are always performing at their peak, always doing the best that they can.
Awesome. Now, before we move on to some more of those optimization strategies, I was reading through the research, and there was this really interesting section on frequently asked questions about Google Ads costs.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great way to kind of address some of the more practical, down-to-earth questions that our listeners might have.
Love it. Let's do it.
Okay. Are you ready to tackle a few of those?
I'm always up for a good Q&A. What's the first one that caught your eye?
Well, this one's pretty straightforward. Can you advertise on Google for free?
That's a great question. And I think it's something that a lot of people wonder about. And the answer is technically yes. There are tools like Google My Business, and you can get free product listings on Google Shopping.
Right.
Those things allow businesses to get some visibility without having to pay for ads.
So there are options.
Yeah,
Okay. But I'm guessing they probably have their limitations.
they definitely do.
You get what you pay for.
For sure.
Right.
While those free tools are great for, local search results and maybe just basic product visibility, they don't give you the same level of control and targeting that you get with paid Google Ads campaigns. They're a good starting point if you're just starting out.
Okay.
But if you're really serious about growing your business and reaching your ideal audience, you're going to need to invest in paid advertising at some point.
Right. You got to pay to play.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another question from the research. How much does it cost to sell on Google Shopping? I think this is something that a lot of people are confused about.
Yeah, and the answer is it's a little tricky.
It's complicated.
There's no subscription or listing fee to sell on Google Shopping. You can create a merchant account, you can list your products totally free, no problem. But if you actually want to promote your products through shopping ads, the ones that appear at the top of the search results page when someone searches for a product,
Right.
those you have to pay for on a cost per click basis.
So you're paying every time someone clicks on your ad.
Exactly.
Okay. And what's the typical CPC for those Google Shopping ads?
It can be all over the place, to be honest.
Okay.
It really depends on your industry, how competitive those products are that you're selling, and a
Yeah.
bunch of other factors. But on average, you're probably looking at somewhere between €2,000 and €2 per click. So it's definitely something to factor into your budget if you're an e-commerce business and you want to really drive sales through Google Shopping.
So free listings are great for just basic visibility, but if you want to really compete and stand out, you got to invest in those shopping ads.
Right.
Makes sense. Okay, here's a question that I've always wondered about. How much does it cost to advertise on Google Maps? Because I see those ads all the time, and I'm always curious about how that whole system works.
Yeah, advertising on Google Maps is actually just another form of Google Ads.
Oh, okay.
So it also works on that pay-per-click model. And typically the CPC for Google Maps ads is a little bit higher than for regular search ads, usually somewhere between €1 and €. But again, it can fluctuate depending on your location, the competition, and how good your ads are.
Okay, so it's not a separate platform. It's all part of that Google Ads ecosystem. Makes sense. So we've covered free advertising, we've covered Google Shopping, we've covered Google Maps.
Yeah.
Let's get into the nuts and bolts of Google Ads budgeting. How does that whole system work? Because I think a lot of people are kind of intimidated by the budgeting aspect of it. Like, how do you set it up? What are the rules? What do you need to know?
I totally get it. It can seem complicated at first, but honestly, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, good.
Google Ads gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to budgeting. So you can set a daily budget for each of your campaigns. And that's basically the maximum amount that you're willing to spend each day.
Makes sense.
Or you can have a shared budget across multiple campaigns, which can be really useful if you're running like a bunch of different campaigns with different goals.
Right, you don't have to micromanage every single campaign.
Exactly. It just simplifies things.
So if I set a daily budget of, say, €50, does that mean that Google's definitely not going to spend more than €50 on my ads on any given day?
That's the idea. It's like a cap on your spending.
Okay.
However, there are some cases where Google might go a little bit over your daily budget. Like if they see a chance to get you a ton of conversions, they might spend a bit more knowing that they can adjust things on the following days to stay within your overall monthly budget.
Okay, so they're not going to go crazy and spend like €500 on a day when my budget is €50.
Right. They're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll never spend more than your total monthly budget, which is calculated as 30.4 times your daily budget. So it's all designed to give you control, but also allow for some flexibility to jump on those good opportunities when they pop up.
Okay, so there's some wiggle room built in there.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, here's the €1,000,000 question, literally. How does Google Ads actually figure out your cost per click?
Yeah.
Like, what is the secret formula behind those numbers? How does it all work?
It's actually not as mysterious as it seems.
Okay, good.
Google uses an auction system to determine your CPC. And while the actual calculations are pretty complex, basically, your CPC is figured out by taking the ad rank of the ad that's below yours, dividing it by your quality score, and then adding 0.01.
Okay, that sounds like a math problem from my nightmare.
That's kind of algebra, yeah.
Yeah. So can you break that down for us non-math whizzes out there? Like, what does that actually mean in plain English?
Sure. So basically, the higher your quality score is, the less you're going to pay per click.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense, right?
Right.
Your quality score is basically a measure of how relevant and useful your ads are to the people seeing them. And it takes into account things like how closely your keywords match what people are searching for, the overall experience on your landing page, and your expected click-through rate.
Got it. So it's not just about like throwing the most money at Google. It's about creating good quality ads that people actually find valuable.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, if your ads are top-notch and your quality score is really high, you can actually outrank those competitors who are bidding more money than you, but you'll be paying less per click because your quality score is so good.
That's pretty awesome. I love that. Quality wins. Okay. This next question is for all the competitor folks out there. What are the most expensive keywords in Google Ads? I'm ready for some crazy numbers.
Well, you can probably guess, but the most expensive keywords tend to be in those industries where the value of a single customer is really, really high. So things like law, insurance, finance. We're talking industries where one client could be worth thousands, even millions of euros over their lifetime.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they're willing to pay a lot to acquire those clients.
Okay, give me some examples. Like, what kind of keywords are we talking about here? What are the ones that are going to make my wallet cry?
In the legal world, a keyword like mesothelioma lawyer can cost upwards of €200 every single time someone clicks on it.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's because mesothelioma lawsuits are often really big cases with huge settlements, so lawyers are willing to shell out a lot of money to get those clients.
That's more than some people's rent. Okay, what else?
Other expensive keywords include things like insurance, mortgage. Those can cost anywhere from like 40 to 50 euro per click. Again, because of the competition and the potential value of each customer.
So if you're in one of those really competitive fields, you got to be prepared to spend some serious cash to go after those top keywords.
Right.
But I think the takeaway here is really keyword research is crucial, right? You've got to find that balance between keywords that make sense for your business and keywords that you can actually afford to target.
Right. And that's where the tools and strategies for keyword research become super valuable.
Right.
Because there are ways to find those hidden gems, those keywords that are less competitive, but still really relevant to the people you're trying to reach.
The sweet spot.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot here, from the basics of budgeting to those crazy expensive keywords. Any final thoughts or anything you want to share with our listeners before we move on?
I think the most important thing to remember is that Google Ads costs are always changing. There's no magic formula. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right.
The best approach is to educate yourself, to try different things, and to always be optimizing your campaigns based on what you're seeing in the data.
And never lose sight of that ROI.
Yes.
It's not about minimizing costs. It's about making sure you're getting the most value out of your investment.
Yep.
So understand your audience, create amazing ads that people want to click on, and track your results carefully.
Exactly. And if you ever feel stuck or overwhelmed, there are tons of resources out there to help you.
Right.
Don't be afraid to reach out to an agency or talk to an expert. They can give you guidance and support to make sure you're on the right track.
Perfect. Okay, so we've talked about costs, we've busted some myths, and now I'm really excited to get into some more of those optimization strategies.
You too.
Everybody wants to make the most of their budget, right? Let's dive into some tactics that people can actually use to make their campaigns better. Give us the good stuff.
Okay, let's talk about optimization. There are so many things you can do to really fine-tune your campaigns and make that ROI go up, up, up. It's not about getting lucky. It's about working smarter, not harder.
Okay, I like that. Work smarter, not harder. So where do we even begin?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to constantly be refining your keyword targeting. We talked before about choosing the right keywords.
Right.
But it's not a one-time thing. You have to regularly look at the data, see how your keywords are performing, and make adjustments based on what's working and what's not.
So it's kind of like playing chess, you know? You got to figure out which moves are going to give you the best outcome.
Totally. A strategic game. And don't be afraid to play around with those different keyword match types. Remember broad match, phrase match, exact match. Find that sweet spot between reaching a lot of people and being super relevant to their searches.
Keyword optimization. Check. What else can we do to really get the most out of our ad budget? What are some other things we can do?
Audience targeting is huge. Google Ads gives you so many ways to really zero in on specific groups of people. You can target them based on their demographics, their interests, their behaviors, even past interactions they've had with your website.
So it's not about just throwing a big net out there and hoping to catch a few fish. It's about being really precise.
Exactly. It's like you're using a spear gun instead of a fishing net.
I like that analogy. So the more specific we can get with our targeting, the better our results are going to be.
Absolutely. And you can even create custom audiences based on people who have visited specific pages on your site, or people who have abandoned their shopping carts, or even people who have interacted with your ads on social media.
It's like we can gently nudge them towards that conversion because we know what they're interested in.
Exactly. You're using data to make sure you're reaching the right people at the right time with the right message. It's all about that perfect alignment.
Okay, keyword optimization, audience targeting, I'm taking notes. What other optimization tricks do you have up your sleeve?
A/B testing is a must-do. It's essential for really improving your campaign performance.
Okay.
So basically, you create a couple of different versions of your ads with little changes in the headline, maybe the ad copy, maybe the images, and then you let Google run those ads at the same time, and you see which one does the best.
So we're letting the data tell us what people actually respond to instead of just guessing.
Yes, exactly. A/B testing takes out all that guesswork. It helps you find the things that lead to more clicks and more conversions. It's about combining creativity with those hard numbers.
Data-driven creativity. I love that. No more gut feelings. We've got cold, hard facts to back up our decisions.
Exactly. And speaking of data, don't forget about conversion tracking. You have to make sure you're tracking the actions that actually matter to your business, right?
Right.
Whether it's sales, signups, form submissions, downloads, whatever it is that's important to you, you need to track those conversions to see what's working.
You can't improve something if you don't know how it's doing, right?
Right. You got to measure it. Conversion tracking gives you that insight into which keywords are working, which ads are working, which landing pages are actually getting people to convert. Without it, you're just throwing darts in the dark.
So conversion tracking is like our guide. It's pointing us in the right direction.
It's your compass.
Okay. So I get all this, but it feels like a lot to keep track of.
Right.
There are so many different elements to Google Ads. Do you have any tips for staying organized and not losing your mind in all of this?
Absolutely. I think one of the most helpful things you can do is to set up your campaigns in a really clear and structured way. Think of it like building a house.
Okay.
You need a strong foundation, you need those separate rooms, and you need a logical flow from one room to the next.
Okay. So how do we apply that to Google Ads? How do we build a well-structured Google Ads house?
I love that. So start by grouping your campaigns together based on a theme. Maybe it's by product, by service, by target audience, whatever makes sense for you. And then within each campaign, you create ad groups that have similar keywords and ads. This structure makes it much easier to actually manage your campaigns, track their performance, and adjust your bids more strategically.
So it's like creating a filing system for our Google Ads. Keep everything neat and tidy so we don't get lost in a sea of keywords and ads.
Exactly. The more organized you are, the easier it will be to see those opportunities to improve and make those smart, data-driven decisions that are going to lead to better results.
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've explored the wild world of Google Ads costs. We've busted some myths. We've even learned some amazing optimization strategies.
I know, it's been quite the journey.
It has. It's been a wild ride. But I want to leave our listeners with one final thought before we wrap things up.
Okay, go for it.
Google Ads can be an incredibly powerful tool for businesses of all shapes and sizes, but it's not a magic solution. It's not going to magically solve all your problems overnight. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes a willingness to keep learning and adapting to really master it.
So true.
But if you're willing to put in the work, the rewards can be phenomenal. You can find new customers, you can grow your business, you can achieve your goals. It all starts with really understanding how the system works and being willing to change and evolve as things change in the digital marketing world.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Stay curious,
Mhm.
stay flexible, and always be trying new things. Digital advertising is always evolving. There are always new strategies to discover, new tools to use, new ways to connect with your ideal customers. So never stop learning, never stop experimenting, and never be afraid to push the boundaries.
I love that. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Google Ads costs. We hope you've learned something new today and feel empowered to take your campaigns to the next level.
It's been a pleasure being here.
And remember, we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to intrigue you and arm you with even more knowledge to help you crush it in the world of digital marketing. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep those conversions coming.